Hello, I'm Cadwyn Morris, and this is my top 5, where I give you my top 5 films, TV shows, TV episodes. In the last one, I done my top 5 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. In this one, I'm doing my top 5 Clint Eastwood movies. And I'm here to tell you right now, oh, this was a migraine. This was a headache. 3 days it took me to define this list. What made this list so difficult to define was the fact that not only when you look at Clint Eastwood movies are you looking at quantity, but quality as well. There are films that Clint Eastwood done that, as you look down the list, it's just like, wow. I mean, I forgot about these films and I forgot how good these films really are. And I got to the point whereby I had to actually sit down and watch, to my pleasure, the top 3 of my list just to make sure that I got them in the right order. So there were decisions I had to make when doing the top 5 list. First of all, the first thing I had to define was, what is a Clint Eastwood movie? Do I take just the films that he directed, or do I take the films that he just starred in? And given that Clint Eastwood is both an actor and a director, and has sometimes acted in films that he's also directed, the film got a little bit complicated. That combined with the fact that Clint Eastwood has 72 titles to his name. That's just incredible by itself. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know, for a guy who was branded as just an actor, he's got 38 directing credits to his name. That might not, 38 credits might not sound like, oh, that's a big list. I mean, it's a good list. It's not a big list. But given that Steven Spielberg, who is a director, has 55 to his name, and 5 of those are currently in production, 38 is a bloody big number when you think about it. So, plus, again, Clint Eastwood, 4 times Oscar winner. Total awards that he's won is 136. He's nominated for a further 130, so he's been nominated and for 266 awards, and won 136 of them. That's more than 50%. So yeah, there are films that I have put on the list that I had to narrow down to my top 5, and there were films that I had to leave out, and it was almost painful to leave them out, because if I just sort of go through my list here and tell you the ones that I left out before I get to my top 5, you'll realise why. So, like, films I nearly put into the top 5 but didn't quite make it were A Fistful of Dollars, Kelly's Heroes, Hang 'em High, Pale Rider, Bridges of Madison County, and Dirty Harry. Okay, now some of you are probably thinking, whoa, how can you not put Dirty Harry into, the top 5 Clint Eastwood films? I mean, it's one of the movies that defined his career, right? It's true. Dirty Harry did indeed sort of do masses for Clint Eastwood. I mean, everybody associates Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. The problem is that since Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood has made some brilliant films. And each of those films is better than Dirty Harry. There's no other way of putting it. So whilst Dirty Harry is an iconic character, the films that he's in, he's made better. He's made better movies since. So let's get into talking about the top 5. So in at number 5, I give you the movie Space Cowboys. I love this film. This film is a joy to watch, and I think this film is probably the most fun Clint Eastwood film that's ever been made. It's, the movie stars Tommy Lee Jones, Donald Sutherland, James Garner, and Clint himself, and it's sort of a fish out of water story. It's about a group of astronauts that are past it, that are no longer associated with NASA. They're no longer associated with the space program. They never had the opportunity to go into space as such. And there's a situation that's brewing aboard one of the satellites, and they need them to go fix it. And it's showing how being disconnected from society or technology for any length of time makes you disassociated. And it's just a damn good fun film. Okay, if you watch Space Cowboys, it'll just put a smile on your face. And the other thing about that is that what's good about this sort of story, and what's good with all Clint Eastwood stories, is the fact that the characterizations tend to have the relationships that define sort of this little bit of story and add an extra layer and dimension to the story and to the characters and how they impact the characters around them. That tends to be one of the staples of, particularly later in his career, Clint Eastwood movies. So yeah, in at number 5, Space Cowboys, damn fine film, great end. It's a little bit of sullen end, I suppose, when you see what happens, but you still feel good about it, and it still leaves you with a sort of a, you know, I know that's not supposed to be a happy ending, but I'm still happy with it anyway. And that's a very difficult thing to pull off. But anyway, that's my number 5. In at number 4, it's Sudden Impact. Yes, okay, Dirty Harry does make it to the list, but not in the movie Dirty Harry, in the movie Sudden Impact. This is probably the best movie with Dirty Harry Callahan, and it's a story about rape revenge, and it's got more thought to the film than all the other Dirty Harrys. It's not really just a blunt sort of anti-hero movie. It does tell a story. It does tell the story of a woman who is subject to some awful things, but it doesn't try to comment on it in that way. It asks questions, but doesn't really make a comment on it to say, you know, this is how it should be handled or whatever. But and certainly not the way Dirty Harry handles it, because the way he handles it is, you know, boom. But it tries to bring the sort of subject to the forefront without really making a serious, you know, judgment on it. So that's Sudden Impact. In at number 3, this is a great one. This is where my brain had to rattle as to which one was the best one. It's The Outlaw Josey Wales. This is, if you're looking for a western movie and you want to associate it with Clint Eastwood, The Outlaw Josey Wales is definitely it. This is a guy who is a gun-toting, just brutal. I mean, the story is again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how characters surrounding the lead character affect the story, and how the characterizations drive the story. There is a situation that does drive the actual plot, but how the character interacts with that plot with the people around him does make it a very, very solid performance and really, really enjoyable. So his family, Josey Wales' family, is murdered by a group of guerrillas. This takes place just after the American Civil War, and he is off to slay the murderers. There's no other way of putting it. He interacts with people throughout his journey, but he is definitely out for revenge. And it's just, yeah, gun in either hand and just blowing people away without mercy. And it's just a fantastic film. So that's my number 3. Number 2, and this is where it was like, you know, how do you decide? So my number 2 is $1 Million Baby. I remember the first time I watched this film, I felt very much that it was a divided movie, that it was, the first half of the movie was telling one story, the second half of the movie was telling another half the story. And even though I felt that there were 2 stories going on, it was masterfully crafted into one story that had this continual thread run through it. I just felt that $1 Million Baby done such a fantastic job of it. First of all, it looked beautiful, and it starts off as a sort of Rocky Balboa story, and by the end of it, it's a story about euthanasia, and that's where the story changes. That's where the mood of the film changes. That's what the point of the film is about. Now again, it's not really saying that, you know, they're for euthanasia or anything like that. It's simply saying, look, this is what the character's facing. This is what the character's choices are. These are the choices that they presented with, and this is the decision that they made. Talk about it. So it's not really saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing or anything like that. It's simply putting it out there and leaving you to decide whether or not you think it was a good thing or a bad thing or not. It's simply saying that this is what the character did. So that's my number 2 pick. And again, you know, if you just look at my top 5 there, it's like, wow, those are some damn good films. Number 1. What's my number 1 Clint Eastwood film? It is the 1992 film Unforgiven. This film stars Clint Eastwood, it stars Gene Hackman and Morgan Freeman. It's set in Wyoming in 1878, and it's a story about a man who's haunted by his past, and that's part of it. When the story picks up, unlike a lot of movies, this story really sort of picks up right in the middle of something that's particularly of an interest, and then it goes further in. So the character that Clint Eastwood plays, William Money, he was a killer and an outlaw, and he had murdered lots of people, and he was a heavy drinker, and he was doing it to sort of cope with the sort of killing sprees that he had gone on, but the people from the past were haunting him. And right the way throughout the film, you get this real vibe that he is really regretful of the things that he's done. Now, the other thing about this film is that it's also a story about the differences between law and justice. And what's brilliant about this film is that it places law and justice into a really small town called Big Whiskey. That is, the law is governed by the marshal, the sheriff, played by Gene Hackman, who's pretty much deciding what the law is. You know, he decides the law, he decides the punishment, and sometimes the punishment doesn't fit the crime, and this is where the story picks up. Now, Clint's character, like I said, he's been a good boy for 12 years. You know, he met a woman, she got pregnant, they had a family, she caught smallpox and died, and he's been away from drink, he's been away from killing, he's turned his life around, and now he's going on the trail for these 2 cowboys to kind of get some sort of justice for this prostitute who was cut up. They'd slashed all her face up and everything like that. It's a really good story as to decide, you know, what do you think is justice here? You know, what is justice compared to what the law says? Because the law decided that the punishment should be, oh, you give the saloon owner some horses and we'll forget about it. And it's like, well, is that justice? You know, so when it comes down to it, then Clint's character goes back to his old ways, and there's this wonderful moment where you know he's gone back to his old ways, because right the way throughout the film he's saying about how he hasn't touched drink, he hasn't touched drink or anything like that, and then there's a moment where you see him pick up a bottle of whiskey and he pops the bottle off and he takes a swig, and you know what happens next is going to be like, oh, there's some bad shit coming your way. So anyway, that's my choice for top 5. They are Space Cowboy, Sudden Impact, Outlaw, Josey Wales, $1 Million Baby, and Unforgiven. What do you think of my list? Let me know what your favourite Clint Eastwood movie is. Let me know in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to this channel or go over and join me on Google+. But until next time, I'll see you later, guys.